She ran through the dried cornfield, stumbling over ruts in the paths, the weeds, the roots, with the leaves brushing against her like rough paper, scratching her skin, making small cuts and breaking off to stick in her hair. She ran as fast as she could. She had to get as far from the house as possible. Looking behind her, she saw that the field had started burning back where she had entered. The corn was dry, and the demonic fires following in her wake showed no mercy. She was lucky to have made it out of the old abandoned house at all. Hell, even out of the basement. The summoning circle, drawn in chalk and outlined with salt, shouldn't have let a demon cross it. But the wind that came with the demon had knocked over one of the sacrifices, a goblet of pig's blood. It was knocked over and washed away a gap in both. The heavy scent of the room's incense was overwhelmed by the scent of the fire and brimstone of hell as the demon came up screaming, fires following in an impressive display of power. That stench of brimstone hung around her, even out in the fresh air, though the smoke of the field fire was beginning to overtake everything. Blood started to dry, sticky on her skin and in her hair. Human, demon, and pig's blood all mingling with the fresh blood that was trickling out of the nicks and scrapes from the corn. The fight inside the basement had been quick and brutal. Athames were nice for performing rituals and summonings, but the more decorative the blade, the less effective of a weapon it made for. She had just been able to escape, and she knew she was being pursued. She hoped that the fire would make it more difficult. She thought back to the vision of hell inside the circle just as the ritual was completing, with the demon rising from its depths, entering the basement to the sounds of ungodly screams and smells, the winds and heat taking out everything so carefully prepared. She would do anything to escape that fate. It seemed as though she had been running for hours, forever, when at last she reached the end of the field. There was a short jaunt across open grass and then a fence. Beyond the fence, a forest grew. The gate was nowhere near her, so she put an extra burst of speed, the last of her reserves, and bolted as quickly as she could to the tree line, climbing the fence, thankful it wasn't barbed wire, and then fell back against a tree once she had gotten herself far enough in to be out of the line of light of the fire. Peeking around the tree, she saw the field ablaze, a veritable inferno behind her. The demon was still hot enough from hell that the aura was enough to set the drying crops ablaze. She took a few deep breaths to calm herself and headed deeper into the forest. It was cooler here, the trees older and moss-grown. There was a sound of a stream up ahead. She made for that, moving more carefully through the thick undergrowth. Worried about being followed, she was hunched over as much as she could be, dodging behind trees at any sound at all. When she finally made it to the stream, she nearly cried out her joy. The water was cold. The stream was a couple of yards wide and a few feet deep in the center. She walked in a few feet and scrubbed herself down, flinching at the coldness stinging her skin and the cuts. She cupped her hands together and drank, finally ducking her head beneath the water as well, and she took a large mouthful while submerged. She caught herself wasting time. She still had a pursuer. She climbed back out of the water and scoured the bank for anything useful. She came across some large rocks and a few fallen limbs. Grabbing a particularly sharp-sided rock with one of the larger branches, she tucked herself deep into a cleft in a stone with some overgrown plants before her. She could hear the footsteps of her pursuer now, not bothering to hide themselves, charging through the forest, hell-bent on leather. In the black and white casting under the moon, he could be glimpsed, starkly pale compared to the grisly painting of black blood that coated him, eyes looking all around, wielding an axe, something that he must have picked up after leaving the old farmhouse. She tensed, waiting for him to get close enough. Like she had, when he reached the stream, he paused for a moment to kneel down and take a drink, panting heavily, looking back and forth as he tried to quench his thirst and clean some of the gore from himself. She took her chance, sneaking as quietly from her hiding spot as she could. She left the branch behind, hefting the rock between both of her hands. He saw her at the last minute and started swinging the axe at her recklessly. He was too late. The rock crashed down on his skull before the axe could make contact, and then it was dropped as he fell to the ground. He let out a roar as she continued slamming the rock into his skull. But after a futile struggle, he finally stopped moving outside of a few twitches as she beat his head into a pulp along the stream, blood washing away with the water, leaving dark trails as it swirled the current. When she finished, she sat back on her haunches and looked at her work. She picked a bit of gray matter from his caved-in skull and regarded it curiously in the moonlight, then placed it in her mouth and chewed. She smiled at the flavor and started digging out a few other bites. She was free now, her summoner dead. She smiled to herself, insisting upon a large goblet of blood as one of her sacrifices had worked out for a few times now. She smiled as she picked up the axe and began cutting up the meat before her. She would need her energies if she was going to have any fun this time.